let us get ready and move into our final topic of today. It's going to be the Magic the Gathering Pro Tour Thunder Junction Pro Tour Thunder Junction. Let me say that again. We're going into Magic the Gathering here. There's a standard competition, a big tournament, a pro tournament that happened this past weekend, the Pro Tour Thunder Junction. I think I said that right that time. All right, Nick, can you run us through a little bit of the background here and what we're expecting? I've got our first slide up. Cowboys.
Outlaws.
Yeehaw.
Mounts. Okay.
Mounts.
Yeah, it's a new type of mechanic in the game. It's like a modified version of another thing. Basically, mounting something, and then you get triggered effects. Basically, so basically, like these pro tours, right? These lead into the world championships. Like if you win a pro tour, if you go 12-4 or at least top 8. You're going to go into the world championships for it. So these are always like a great way for people to just, make it. Get a sleeve up and then just head out and try to see how well you can do with it.
Very cool. Earning circuit points, I believe, right? For the wins?
Yeah. So you can get circuit points and everything like that. And then that way, the number of points that you get, like if you get enough points, but your record isn't good enough, you'd still be able to make it to the world championship if you're high enough on points. But it's not that part really like too much really doesn't like matter. Like there's not many pro tours for the year, but that is the best and more concrete way of making it into Worlds, because Worlds I believe is only like 18 players or something like that. It's a very small tournament, but it is Worlds for Magic the Gathering. So. The easiest way literally would be to make top 8 in one of these tournaments.
Fair. Okay. Well, one of these tournaments happened this past weekend, and we have a little bit of the meta game breakdown for this. I'm going to scroll this down. So the broadcast schedule, it was a 3-day event, pretty straightforward. They got to top 8 by day 3 after some Swiss standard competition. We had players from all over the world come to compete here. And here's what they played. Nick, if you can walk us through a little bit more of the terminology, I fear that my magic spell casting is not that great.
So basically, like Esper, Boros, these are types of colors. So these are just color combinations that the Magic community has adopted because they're prominent characters in the lore will basically lead you to do this, right? So like Rakdos. Literally, there's a guy called Rakdos. He's black and red. So it's a black-red deck. Mono red is mono red. Golgari is black-green. Dimir is blue, black. And that's because there's Dimir cards that were blue-black, and eventually it just became his thing. Azorius is blue-white, because I'm pretty bad at these names too. Domain Ramp. Domain ramp is domain means all 5 colors for the most part. Usually domain will mean like all 5 colors because domain's a mechanic that matters how many basic land types you have. And there's only 5 basic land types. So usually domain ramp means, one of each type. 4 color legends, pretty self-explanatory. It has legends and it's 4 colors.
The most creative name out of the entire bunch.
Yeah, so Tamir is red, green, and blue, I believe. Red, green, blue. Boros is red and white. And then Esper is blue, black, and white. Okay. And so basically the mid-range Esper deck is pretty good and best of ones. And then it also has like a decent, has a really good sideboard plan for the most part. Boros Convoke is extremely good in the best of ones for the most part. And that one has I don't want to say terrible plan B with like the sideboard, but the games don't generally get easier after you sideboard. You just have answers to things.
It's like an all-inclusive deck. You kind of just run it. You don't really like sub stuff in.
Azorius Control. I'll go down to Azorius Control. That's the one I was telling you about before. No creatures whatsoever in the deck.
Really?
Yeah,
so it's all spells?
Just all spells, one planeswalker, and basically it just keeps the board clear. It's just it's a big control deck. A lot of these decks in here are, for the most part, control decks. Like besides the aggro decks, mid range is usually a little bit like, I hate these names that they use because half these decks here they all interact with their opponents in some way.
Okay.
Mirror Control, Golgari mid range, Esper mid range, Azorius Control. They all just interact with your opponent rather than like the mono red aggro deck, which doesn't for the most part.
All right. That seems interesting, but like, of these decks, we're seeing a high deck count, 65 decks for the Esper mid range, the black and red. 31% of players played this deck. And then we got 10% of playing Boros Convoke. Overall, how much of a percentage of the field of the players played control decks is what you're saying? That's the question I'm asking, really. How much?
But most of these decks are semi-control. So like mid-range it's just a form of control deck.
It's like a control hybrid. Gotcha.
Yeah. So they usually mid-ranges are usually a little bit more tempo based. So they're just gonna like slow your opponent down a little bit so that you can just gain over it. Okay. Let me just double check. Yeah. So like 4-color control, Teamer is going to be another control deck. Dimir is a control deck, as it says right there. But also, like the mid-range one is pretty. It's pretty control-y, just like overall. Gotcha. If you were to look at the actual deck list most of the time.
Right. So more or less, it seems that like really a small percentage, maybe about 16 decks totally that were played were aggro. Everything else was like a control and a control hybrid.
Yeah, right now there's a lot of board wipe. Like a lot of stuff that just really clears the field of like creatures.
Okay.
Which is why the Azorius Control was able to like actually like perform for the most part and made it into top 8. I believe the second place person was playing Azorius. Yeah, Yuta was playing Azorius Control. Okay. Boros Convoke made it into the top 8. The deck that won was the Domain Ramp, which I didn't go over. Domain Ramp, as I said, it's like the 5 colors. But this one has like what I would consider now like a legacy staple card. Yeah, like that's like the funny part about it is like 1, 2, 3. 3 big parts of their deck are essentially like legacy staples at this point. With like Leyline Binding is essentially a 6-mana spell that gets cast for 1 mana because it has domain. So if you have 5 lands there, 5 land types, it costs 1. So and it removes something from the game. And then there's another card in the deck called Up the Beanstalk, whereas if you cast something that costs more than 4 mana, you get the draw card. And gotcha. Even if you reduce the cost of it and you're paying 1 for it, you actually get to pay 1, remove something from the game, draw a card.
Yeah, still a big advantage.
Yeah, it's huge. Like domain's pretty crazy just overall. But a lot of these decks are using like Sunfall and Depopulate. Like I don't know what like the percentage of those cards is, but the top decks usually like have it. Like Boros Control isn't going to have it because they're a creature focused deck. Let me see. So let me see.
Right now, I'm looking at like the main staples of like a couple of the decks, and here's a 4-color legend. You said that 4-color legend is the one that won, correct? 4-color domain.
Domain is the one that won.
Oh, domain. Okay.
Did not. Like, and it doesn't do like too bad. Like some of these decks are like interesting decks overall, but it just like in older formats. Like if it's really hard right now to really keep creatures kind of like on the board with how many board wipes exist in Magic at the moment.
Like, right. Going back to the top, that makes it kind of interesting that you're seeing a low aggro deck percentage, but then you're having a very high Esper mid range. Is this the Grief deck that you were talking about a couple weeks ago?
No. That's in Legacy. Yeah,
that's in Legacy. Okay.
Standard doesn't have the.
Okay. Wasn't sure.
Cards, but like again, like Domain Ramp, Azorius Control, Esper Midrange. I believe Esper Midrange. Let me just double check Esper Midrange because I don't play that deck. Right. But Esper Midrange spells. Go for the throat. They do not have like board wipes, but they could have board wipes in the sideboard if they wanted to. They're a little bit more like spot control, like that sort of thing. They're called mid range. Is like a little bit more tempo-y. So it's just going to be a little bit more like disruption, like one-ofs.
More aggressive rather than defensive, reactionary. Gotcha.
Yeah, a single target. They're worried about singular creatures because they're creature focused. And then they have more hand interaction just in general. So they have like a creature that can remove like a card from your opponent's hand until it leaves the field. And then it has like, destroy creature. It has like 7 destroy creatures and then 3 big counter spells. And basically it's just, it's trying to keep things on the board while removing their threats they usually lose to board wipes, which is why they have that counter spell. And then, that's what they're saving that counter for the most part.
So in that way, those decks rely heavily on like precision gameplay, like knowing the other deck and countering the right thing at the right time with a little bit of luck of getting the right thing at the right time. Or what do you think?
So usually when it happens, like you have these counters in your deck, you're gonna know if you're a creature based deck and you have this counter spell in there, just like the Esper Midrange does. The most played one. They're saving that counter spell specifically for the board wipes. Is really like what it is. But some of these board wipes, they're running like 7 board wipes. So really you have to beat them before you run out of counter spells for the most part. But that's the thing that will like ruin your game. So like a lot of the times when you face like one of decks, or like, you face this deck will face that deck and it goes through the whole entire thing. There's something on that person's sideboard or something in their main deck that is specifically just going to shut your game plan down.
Yeah. They're able to sub out.
A lot of the time in the creature ones, it's going to be like the board wipes. The Esper mid-range gets around it a little bit because it has something that will put in creature tokens. But that's not forever. Right? Yeah. So is it like really what it comes down to? But they have abilities to do some stuff, and that's really like where they're going to go for. They're going to use that to make sure that the counter spell is there to destroy, just to counter those board wipes. And then on like their sideboard, they have sideboard plan for like more aggressive aggro decks, because those are the only two things that they're really like worried about. Would be like the Boros Convo. Or like mono red, something along those lines, something that's like faster than them, where they have to like have all these like destroy creature spells and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me bring up. I was going to bring us into. I just closed the tab by accident, but let me bring us into the bracket so we can take a look at how the tournament went. We ultimately see that Yoshihiko Ikawa took first place. With the Domain Ramp deck. But walking it back, he had a pretty strong run, a little bit of a hard time in the first round of this top 8 bracket against Timur Analyst, if I can say it correct. Timur Analyst. There we go. I'm casting magic. Timur Analyst. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we can see in the other bracket on this side, Esper Midrange ended up getting a little bit of an unlucky draw or a lucky pick or seeding, where they're playing a mirror match and came out the side of Arn Huschenbeth. Arne Hushenbeth. I apologize if I was saying that incorrectly, and they actually watched this, but congratulations on, I believe, third or fourth place here. And we can kind of see that it was pretty diverse in the decks when you got to top 8, except for this Esper mid-range going up in that mirror match. Like, you had 2 4-color legends both getting knocked out in the first part of the top 8 here. But then pretty much everything else, not random, but pretty diverse. You don't really get to see that too often, where there's not everybody's mostly playing one deck.
Sometimes, well, most of the time in Magic tournaments, it'll happen this way, because a lot of the times they're certain decks of these, like the Azorius Control, right?
Okay.
Is there to specifically prey on certain types of decks, right? And while on smaller scales, right? Like the certain decks, so like the Esper mid range will probably do better on MTGA, right? Where it's just the online meta versus the in paper meta, and then how many people you have as well really changes a lot of things with a lot of these metas just in general. But Boros Control is really hard matchup for them. It doesn't matter how many creatures you have by turn 4 if you're not killing them, and then they say all the creatures are dead. Get rid of everything. It sucks. So you need really, really fast hands with Boros Convoke, and then how do you beat it because you're red-white? And then the sideboard plan is don't get board wiped, and you say, excuse me, I only have creatures. This I'm just a creature deck. So it's really, Azorius Control is there to prey on more creature-based decks, which it successfully did. It's not a lot of people are really not happy about the deck because it's not very fun to play with. And it probably a lot of these control decks, when they play these control decks and they go in tournaments, personal experience, I hate a lot of control players. They don't play their decks enough. They don't know exactly what the hell they're supposed to be doing. And there's some control players that sometimes you need a little bit of time in order to think. I hate draws. I hate people impacting the overall overall score of other players. You can't get 12-4 to get your pro points to make it to Worlds because some asshole took 80 minutes to play around. So now no one actually won that match. It's just a tie, and they're just drawing it out. And it's that's great. So now the points are completely messed up in the tournament, and it's because draws happen. I get real, and it only happens with control players. And then when
in
control
that way,
is control,
in that way,
40 minutes in between rounds. 40 minutes, man. It's supposed that's 90 minutes for a round. Okay, that's a lot, dude.
Well, in that way, does that warrant a rule change? Not on the decks and that they can play the decks, but then how the points are assigned or in the draw.
So they people have talked about it, but a lot of the time it's people are going to want to play control decks, and it would probably if you really did too much switching with it, it might impact how often control decks are played, and then certain decks.
Yeah.
And it's a very it's a, I don't want to say well balanced ecosystem because Blizzard. It's the hedge trucks will limit their cash, but they don't properly balance a lot of stuff, but it kind of just does take care of itself a little bit, where the metagame shifts and everything like that. But I understand that we want to have control decks and stuff like that. I just don't think that I don't think in large scale tournaments where people's ability to go to Worlds and stuff like that should be impacted by people's inability to play fast enough, because you can get calls for slow play and stuff like that. But it's control decks are very frustrating to play against when the person has not had the proper experience. And that's the same thing for control decks though. Not control decks, combo decks. When your opponent can just take too long to do some stuff because he's not prepared to be there is really what it comes down to. And there's a lot of control players that they'll go to the tournament and they'll say, all right, I'm just going to play the control deck because it's good. And I know that it's good because I saw somebody play with it and I have it built already. And I've just been losing with the deck that I normally play. So they just switch it up and then they play something like that.
It's interesting then that you're talking about like how practiced somebody, how rehearsed somebody is with the thing, but like I wonder too how much of a value it is in the strategy, because like 2 points with that is like looking at like traditional sports. Sometimes in soccer and football, it's more valuable to take the penalty. So rather than play the game, you're going to play the game by dropping on the ground, basically. And then the second thing is I would also see in the NHL and hockey, the way that points were distributed for wins and losses and then overtime, basically like just sort of it elicited a certain style and choice of strategy that wasn't exciting and wasn't good for competition.
Monday, and we got a lot of
so like
we need to talk about Sandra Dorley, the district attorney for Monroe County, New York, because there's this absolutely wild
hold on a second
of her that's gone viral, and in it body cam footage shows police pulling up to Dorley's
autoplay. Love it. Sick. All right, so walking that back a second so I can edit that part out. We also see in the NHL where there's a big strategy with overtimes, and basically if the game goes to overtime, each team gets 1 point, and then normally if you win, you get 3 points, and you lose, you get 0 points. If you go to overtime, you get 1 point, and then if you win in overtime, you get 2 points, I think it is. So like there's basically a point scaling in that way, and they've changed those arbitrary specifics to make it less valuable. But previously there was a incentive and a strategy where you would want to just stall it out like that. And that's kind of what I'm asking here. Is there something in that way the Wizard can do to like change the format of the competition, the point system, where it makes stalling it out less valuable? Because granted, those people might not know, but I doubt these top 8 people don't know. I'm sure if they're doing it with purpose, with like strategy in mind.
It's better to not lose than to lose. Okay. So even if you're not going to win the game, you're not, as long as you don't slow play and it does go past time, you're not negatively impacted by it. Right. A little context is there is already a rule for people who slow play in order to try to like get the clock and run the clock like that. Usually it's not really, usually a judge isn't really called for this except against like certain players.
Known offenders.
Not even known offenders, just how do I put this? I don't want to be
egregious actions, like they're obviously, or what?
It's like, all right, so there's a deck called Doomsday in Legacy, right? It is probably one of the hardest decks in Legacy to play overall. And without going into like details, essentially for whatever situation you're in, right? At that moment, the way the deck wins is it basically reduces the amount of cards in its deck and then puts 1 card on the field, right? But the way that they do it is through a card called Doomsday. Doomsday is 3 mana. You take your graveyard and your deck, and you take 5 cards out of them. And then that's your deck, and everything else gets removed from the game. God. So it is the hardest because you literally have to sit there and you have to run through so many different scenarios. And a lot of these players are experienced and they're not egregious with it, but like a lot of players don't like playing against Doomsday. So they'll usually call slow play on Doomsday players. Like, I'm not even joking. Like if they take 10 seconds more than what the opponent thinks they should be taking in order to like make their Doomsday pile, which is what they call it, their 5 cards, they will get called. A judge will get called. And then they'll like either get like a game loss or they'll get a warning, depending on like the timing of it and everything like that. But again, like the real big problem with the draws just ends up being like the control players just not taking losses because they can't win the game. They know they can't win the game.
So they're not losing.
They're just not losing, and that is an acceptable way to play the game. I don't want people to juke, but it's not good gameplay in a big tournament.
That's where it's more valuable too. So like, can you run me quickly through the points in a format like this or a system like this? Like, if you win, do you get 3 points? It's a percentage based on like.
So usually when you go to a big tournament, you get like 6 points. 3 points for win.
Okay, and then how many do you get? 0 for a loss, or you get like anything for a draw?
0 for a loss.
Okay, is it no negative?
Yeah.
How does it?
Go ahead.
How does it math then? Because then they have to figure like. So like, okay, there's going to be a lot of people that end up going 12-4. There's no tiebreaker games.
No, there's not a lot of people going 12-4. That's why they put 12-4.
Oh, I apologize. You're right. There's going to be a lot of people with the same record, is what I mean. Like, or you need to hit 12-4 to just get it, and they mathematically pick 12-4 to be the entry point.
So usually, depending on how many players there are at like these pro tours, like 500 players or more could lead you into nine to more rounds. But when they say 12-4 in these pro tours, it means that they're going to have 16 rounds, which is why it's on 2 days. 8 rounds one day, 8 rounds the second day. So that's where they're going to go for that. Let me see, winning percentage calculator. Not number of games. Where is it?
I mean, this might be the most magic thing if it's not like it's a very math based thing. If it's not just like a simple, easy calculation, get a win, get 3 points.
Exactly. So get a win, get 3 points. Get a loss, get 0 points. Right. Get a tie, get 1 to 2 points, depending. Is the way that I see it half the time.
1 to 2 points is wild. Why isn't that not like a set number, or is it different between tournaments?
So it matters about so here's the other part. It's about your breakers and like who you played against in the tournament and who your opponents played against in the tournament, which will determine where you are out of like 1,000 players. With like so if you lose to the person who won the tournament in like the first round,
it's worth more.
Right? You are worth more like as a player at that point. So if you keep winning and you only lost to like that one person, you'll have a better breaker and yeah, man. Yeah, dude.
That's so dumb. That's so dumb. Right?
Okay,
it's so convoluted on purpose, and it's tried to like ego basically inflate on that. And like I can understand that for like a Swiss qualifier portion of it, like maybe day 1 you have to like that's involved. Okay, sure, but then day 2, day 3 absolutely should not involve that.
Yeah. So like let's say in this one, right? If they had 1,000 players and 16 rounds, right? Which I don't know that they have 1,000 players. For this, and I'm so bright because I have a white screen on right now. Let me step back. There will be 5.9 players at 13.3, and this again, because of the way these calculators work, it does not include ties, dropped, double game losses. Like there's so much more. This is the worst part. Like Magic is an English college level course. Just in general, Magic tournaments are the SA fucking T's. Okay, like it's fucking terrible, dude. Like it's so fucking terrible. Like we're sitting because you'll be sitting there in a tournament, dude, and it's like you win the first round, you win the second round, you're like sick, dude. I'm fucking doing well, right? And then you lose 2 rounds, and you're like, how many losses until I drop?
And like you're sitting there for You're sitting there for 16 hours taking this test, basically.
Yeah, if you're gonna stay like both days, right? So like a lot of legacy tournaments will be like 2-day events. It'll be 1 day for the tournament because they don't, and then they'll do top 8 the next day. Pro Tour, they do it over 3 days, so they, it's a little bit easier for like viewers because they do broadcast it.
Yeah.
Legacy does get broadcasted too, but like, you know, you're not going to watch 1,000 players and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So usually like I'm not even joking with you when I say this, like the last big tournament me and Ewok went to, right? I lost 3 rounds right off the jump. I just lost 3. I went 0-3 first 3 rounds. And I was like, yo, one more, I'm dropping and I'm going to go just sit there. Right. So I'm like 3 hours deep on like a 10-round tournament, I think it was. And, you know, Ewok's like 1-2 or something like that. And he's like, yeah, all right. You know, if I lose 2 more, I'll drop as well. So we're like, all right, 4 losses is 1 will drop, right? Obviously, Ewok starts winning until the end of the day. And now I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'll just stay in, I guess. And so like, I'm just going around. And then that's when I proceed to start winning and everything like that. But like, and I broke even on my record. But
yeah,
it's literally sitting there doing like math problems. And then if your record is like randomly spicy, like I was literally doing SAT math questions for Ewok because of the fact that I was like, all right, but if your breakers end up being from like if the people you beat right here, if they make it to this position and they do this, then and these guys lose, then you'll get matched up, whereas those guys will get matched down. And like it gets really, really brutal. And you know,
that's unfortunate, but it feels like the most Magic thing. Magic players are going to be Magic players. And on that note, let's run down the Magic players that won this tournament real quickly. Check the bag that they got. As we mentioned, Yoshihiko Ikawa took first place, scored 45 circuit points, and a total of $50,000, 50,000 of those dollars. Wonderful to see. And Nick, I believe you were telling me a little bit, he had a pretty cool backstory coming over to this pro tour to try to qualify specifically here.
Yeah, so he's from Japan, just in general. He's from Japan, comes over, and he's played in multiple pro tours. He's played in a ton of different like just top high level events, and he really has never like walked away in a pro tour with a championship, just in general. And so now he's got 2 top finishes under his belt, this one being underneath the pro tour, which is just great. And this is the one that he said he was just like, he's like getting better. He's like, I'm getting better and I'm ready to like win the pro tour finally. So, you know, congrats to him, and like his dreams come true, right? Like the realization is that.
Big congrats. I mean, he's like it says here, he started in 2000 playing Magic, and then went pro in 2010. So it's been a long time coming, a lot of planning, strategy, and finally getting a good read. For him to like come top here, he won $50,000, that's a whole year's salary. This man can now play the game for the rest of the year respectfully.
So like, you know, they don't get stipends like a lot like the Pokemon TCG or anything like that.
Okay.
At least from what I've seen, they don't get stipends that I know of. But you know, $50,000 like does go a long way. But he's one of the players who probably goes to you know, he's going to go to a lot of different pro tours just in general.
Right,
like,
and he did travel out. He did travel out from Japan over to the U.S. for this tournament, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I'm pretty sure a couple of the players like that ended up in top 8 ended up coming over from Japan. But like as I was saying, a couple of these players probably play in every single pro tour that there is, because like the paper practice is paramount compared to even like playing online. Like online is not as important. Like you'll get like a gist of something, but you won't. It's so weird.
There's a feel difference.
Yeah, it's like a feel difference, but also like you don't have a computer making everything random for you. You know, because like computer random, it's random. But you know, so like, and some of these people, if they play on Magic the Gathering online, they can't do best of ones because there's like I think the mana like you don't know about this, but there's like a mana algorithm basically where like they smooth out your hand in best of ones so that the player experience is better, but the decks are like the decks are better than they should be, kind of, because you'll always have like a land in your opening hand most of the time.
Gotcha.
But that's like their algorithm for the most part.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. And I know Magic is a game filled with luck, making sure you read the meta pretty well and then ride that luck and make those plays. So it's good to see it come together like it did for Yoshihiko. Hopefully continue to see it. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to them, as well as the rest of the top 10 here. Winning some prize pool. Continue making that tour. Continue on your journey in this competition. Love to see it.
Yeah, man. Like it's wild. It's such a cool thing when somebody just like tries real hard. Like I'm gonna go win, and I want to see. Like I'm hoping because I don't know if I've said this on our channel. I don't know if I've said this before on our podcast or our channel, whatever you want to call it. That the world champion should be getting a card made for himself.
Yes, we went over it in one of our early episodes, one of the past ones, where some pretty cool stuff where you literally have a card made in your image. You're put on the card. It's designed in your flavor, the deck that you won with, I believe.
So you get to help design it. Is the thing. Yeah, so
that's such a cool like reputation thing, especially in that community.
It's crazy. I mean, like one of the card's nicknames, he's called Dark Confidant, because of the person that helped design it, like the person whose card it is. It's called Bob.
It's called Bob?
Like, yeah, we just call it Bob in the community. The card's name is Dark Confidant, but everybody calls him Bob. He's the guy's name is Bob. So like it's like you got a Bob out? Yeah, I got Bob out, bro. Like shit like that.
That's amazing. That's one of those moments you live for. So there's a lot of reputation at stake with that win and that play.
Yeah, it's really super cool. Even to people like if it's just a world championship like card comes out, like it's something that like a player helped design rather than like they created in a cave with a box full of scraps.
I doubt Wizard and Hasbro are working with a box full of scraps these days, but I get your point. Yeah, it's more intuitive and grounded in the player's wants and like what they see their experiences rather than the machinations of an employee in an office trying to like shake things up or work towards a goal.
Yeah, I mean, and also like Standard is in one of the best spots that it's ever been in. And like my two main things used to be Standard and Legacy, and then like Standard kind of got weird, but now they're starting to bring it back. Now every card you have can last for 3 years in the meta. Like it doesn't mean that it's going to be like a top card or anything like that, but like your cards don't rotate out once a year anymore, right? Because like every time, like literally, it used to be the feeling of a new set comes out and you lose a set. So there would only be like 9 sets total, and now it's just 3 years. Now it's this card's good for 3 years. I keep moving off the camera.
That's fair. That's fun. Yeah, a little more sustainability, a little bit more value. You can learn a deck better. A meta can evolve a bit better. But that all sounds good. And of course, we're wrapping up here with the meta game. Any final notes for the topics at hand? This last Standard comments any for that?
Nah. Nope. I got no final comments. We've been going for 3 hours.
We've been talking a whole lot, so let's do a less yapping and more leaving. This has been the Esport Meta. Thank you for joining us. You can see us here every week live on our Twitch. You can also check us out on all the social medias, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Anywhere that you're at, we're also there. So if you enjoyed us, let us know by liking, subscribing. It helps us dive into the algorithm a bit further and make this thing a bit louder. That's it for me. I've been Billy Sims. I've enjoyed this day. This is Nick Layton. He may or may not have enjoyed the day. Nick, did you enjoy the convo?
The convo was fine. The day was okay.
Well, to send us off in that way, you were right. Hopefully this brightens your day. You were right. And it pains me to say this. Anyway, that's been it for the Esports Meta. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you here next time.